Welcome to the Sinistral Rifleman experience at Midnight Brutality 2023. I competed in Light Fighter, the weapon light division, because I don't own any night vision equipment. I didn't want to borrow equipment that I was unfamiliar with for the event, and I thought it was important to proof out the stages to make sure they were doable for people competing in this division. To prepare for this match, I needed to decide which rifle I wanted to shoot and which weapon light or lights I wanted to use. I knew we were planning on having targets out to 200 yards, and through testing my various weapon lights at night outdoors, I came to find out that most of them weren't sufficient for going the distance. They would be quite good for lighting up the inside of a building or perhaps a parking lot, but going past 50 to 75 yards wasn't something that any of the ones I already owned could do. Another thing I found was that my 5.56 rifles generated quite a bit of muzzle smoke at night that would be backlit by the white light, and if there wasn't sufficient airflow, that smoke could obscure targets downrange in a hurry. Comparatively, my 9mm carbine generated much less muzzle smoke, and given the max distance of 200 yards, I decided to use my 9mm carbine for this match. The Rain 3.0 I purchased had a much better throw of the light, but I did have some battery connectivity issues with this light where it would dim or shut off entirely. We did purchase some Streak 9mm ammo to use for this event. These are essentially luminescent tracers that don't generate any kind of heat. Hopefully it makes the video more interesting for you to watch. This is the PCC I used for Midnight Brutality. It is a KP9 with a recluse trigger. I'm using the Arrow upper with the linkage system, so it does function with the Lastron bolt hole open with Glock magazines. I have the lead and steel Promethean red dot. It has an EOTech style reticle and runs on a CR123 battery. I do have the SIG Juliet 4 magnifier mounted, and I did 0 with that, although I didn't use it very much at Midnight Brutality. On this side of the forearm, I have the Streamlight ProTac 2.0, which has a 2000 lumen illumination and 17,700 Candela. This is an FM Products lightweight 9mm barrel with Young Manufacturing blast deflector mounted. I'm also using the FM Products bolt, and I have a 8.5 ounce buffer with 308 spring in the buffer system. On this side, I have the Rain 3.0 mounted. It has 1,250 lumens, but 100,000 Candela. So when you see my light punching out really far in video, it's the Rain 3.0 going the distance, whereas the ProTac from Streamlight functions more like a floodlight. I have both pressure switches mounted up top, but I tended to just go to constant on mode and leave it on for the duration of a stage. This is our first stage of the night during the staff match, but it's the second run through for me and about half the shooters on our squad. The first time through, we had a spinner you had to actually rotate, and we found that no one could do that in the dark with the target constantly being obscured by smoke, myself included. As we roll past these bays, there's a total of 6 poppers that have to get knocked down. Have some time to kill before I exit the truck, so I do a reload, then hand my rifle off to the RO. Once I'm out of the truck, he's going to hand it back to me. The targets downrange you're going to see are a double spinner target, and rather than rotate it, you have to simply get one hit on each of the 4 plates. So after running about 50 yards, you're about 50 yards away from the targets. And from each of these positions, you're going to have to get those 4 hits. Now all the way across the range to the other barrel. And once I'm done at this position, I'm going to go back to the center and shoot from the VTAC.
Move on, VTAC.
Sometimes when I'm just shooting where I know the target is, because even with as little muzzle smoke as the 9mm generates, it does obscure the targets downrange a bit.
That was a good run.
On this stage, I am first in Light Fighter and third overall. My GoPro stopped working because of the cold, so the rest of this footage is going to be recorded through Carl's Opsin. He simply just kept wearing on his helmet and hit record. On this stage, there are 2 targets in the corners. The shooter has to get 2 hits alternating on those. then knock down the popper in the center, run down range, reset it, and run back. I'm wearing a Streamlight Sidewinder on my helmet for navigation. This is a moment where I should emphasize that these stages are not meant to represent actual tactical scenarios. Obviously, running around in the dark with a helmet light on constantly would make you a target for incoming fire. That said, we are considering different things for future events, such as only allowing weapon lights to be on in shooting positions rather than be on constantly. But that is to be determined. Time to switch to the next port. Again, alternating hits on the two targets in either corner. And after those hits are made, knock down the popper in the center. Watching the streak ammo through the option is kind of interesting. You can definitely see the bullets traveling down range, and I think that makes this a little more interesting to watch. One more iteration of running down range. I'll take this moment to point out it is well worth the extra second to make sure the popper is fully set before you start running back, because if it falls down, you're going to have to run back and reset it. More time to kill while I'm jogging back. It was really weird that my GoPro turned off because of the cold. It was only in the 30s during this match, and I've used it in those conditions before, but for some reason it just didn't want to work. It's worked fine since I got back home in any case. And on this iteration, just the two targets in the corners again. The popper stays up so the stage is reset already for the next shooter. On this stage, I am second in Light Fighter Division and 8th overall. Now on to the Cassador drill. We have a silhouette target 100 yards away. And you see I have to shift a little bit because the muzzle smoke's building up. It is really cool seeing those strobes go off in the dark, knowing that you made the hit. This time we're using a 50-pound kettlebell. Every glow stick you cross is a minus 10-second bonus. Normally setting the rifle down on the bipod on the Cassador drill is faster, but it's really not in this uneven terrain. I shouldn't have bothered with it, and it ended up being a little bit more liability worrying about the rifle tipping over or not than it was worth. After that first position, the hits come easy for me. Getting close to the target, and I can clearly see where it's at. Both my lights on are lighting up the whole woods. Again, not the most tactically sound thing to do, but we're not testing tactics at this match. We're simply testing shooter capabilities when combined with their equipment. The only time you're going to want to light up the woods like this in practicality is if you're fighting Sasquatch, skunk apes, or wendigos, those sorts of creatures that lack projectile attacks. Just a few throws left to go. In typical fashion, my last throw is going to be like 2 feet. Almost never seem to get it to where like a solid throw puts it over the line. There's always just like one little bit remaining at the end of these stages for me. On this stage, I am second in Light Fighter and 6th overall. The stage begins with a shooter carrying a mine. When you get to each position, you'll flip over another mine and it will tell you if you need to shoot close, middle, or far. You have to call out which target you're supposed to shoot to the RO so they know that you're shooting the correct target. These targets at the middle and far positions do blend in, particularly at the angle up against the trees. And you'll notice on this stage, as opposed to previous ones, I do have to wait for my muzzle smoke to clear a few times to get a clear shot. The dynamics with muzzle smoke make it even more important to get first round hits than it would otherwise. Misses are that much more costly when you have to wait for it to clear.
Oh, the middle one.
The shooter has to do this until they've made a total of 7 hits. Notice how I shift slightly out of my muzzle smoke here to make the hit. It's definitely feeling like the colder it got, the further into the night we went, the more the muzzle smoke just hung in the air. Definitely less airflow, too, down on this portion of the range. I think all these stages would be incredibly simple to do in the daytime, but doing it at night with lighting conditions or using night vision equipment makes everything substantially more challenging. On this stage, I am 2nd in light fighter and 5th overall. This is the blind shoot house stage that unfortunately blew over before the main match really began. For our course of fire, the shooter has to run in here and from this cone get 2 hits, top and bottom, on the spinner. After they've made those hits, the shooter will advance to the door and throw a flashbang simulator into the room. Unfortunately, my flashbang simulator doesn't go off. I have to wait 5 seconds, then I can enter the room. This was a blind stage, even for us as the staff. I didn't know how many targets were in here or where they all were. One of the targets here, you'll see me hesitate because it's in a strange location. It's down up against that barrel. And I had to think very quickly that, oh, that is a valid shoot target. It's vertical. It has a bullet trap up against it in the form of a blue barrel. So I am supposed to shoot that. Several people on our squad did not shoot that. They thought it was just a spare target sitting down there. Before exiting the building, drop the mag, fire the last round out, come back to the cone, reload, and get 4 more hits on the spinner. Ultimately, no score for staff match shooters on this stage because we did not reshoot it as the side match once it was reconfigured. And now for the final stage of the night. It's about 3:30 in the morning for us. Very tired, very sore, so of course let's do the longest and most challenging stage as our last stage. The shooter has to climb up on top of these platforms and from the very top engage a single rifle target at about 100 yards away. It does look a bit further from this angle up here. This is where my Rain 3.0 losing contact with the battery and working intermittently is definitely a hindrance. My Streamlight doesn't throw quite far enough to see the target, and I'm going to waste a lot of time trying to find that target looking through my optic down in there. Tried using my magnifier, but there's so many particulates in the air, it actually made things worse. I do eventually find the target by looking for the base and the stand. Those are more visually distinct than the target itself. I have to drop the mag and fire one last high-value shot. And of course, after getting 2 in a row, I missed that final shot. That's my single plus 60-second penalty during the match. Trying to stow the partial mag back on my plate carrier, but I can't find a home for it, so I end up just stuffing it in my pocket. Now that I'm down on the ground, I've folded my bipod so it doesn't snag, and I got to crawl through this pipe. This pipe is a tight fit. I end up doing more pulling with my arms than I normally do crawling through these things. Watching myself in this video after the fact, I feel like I'm moving painfully slow versus what I normally do during daytime stages. But from looking at the results, this was apparently the case for the majority of shooters on this stage. Whether it was going very slow because they had a very hard time seeing the targets at distance here, or just moving around in the dark becoming that much more difficult. From here, I have to get 1 hit on each of the targets. 2 of them in the bays, 1 of them in the field, which was the first one I engaged. On this stage in particular, you can see my Rain 3.0 going to full power at various points like now and then dimming out at others as the contact of the battery changes under recoil. The clunk impact noise in this target is hard to discern if it's an actual hit or not. Carl's observing through his Obson and says he sees the target wiggle and calls the hit. Now I have to move to the end of the range and engage 2 targets from 2 different fighting holes. These fighting holes are lined with concrete, so I take some care getting in there to not bash my knees up. From the right fighting hole, that target is very easy to see. It's going to be very difficult to see from the one off to the left.
High right. High right. High right. Hit. 2. 2 hits.
I forgot that on this stage, the 2 hits weren't alternating, they're in sequence, so you can double tap the target every time you're supposed to engage it.
Hit! Move!
From this position, the popper in the field is just above the vegetation. I have a very hard time locating it.
Left. Left.
You can also see here that my Rain 3.0 is not working at this point.
You're on it.
It's dimmed out, and I'm not getting full power downrange with it.
Left. Down. Right there. Hit. Hit.
And there you can see it powered back up. And I can see that one off to the right much more easily.
Hit.
I am 4th in Light Fighter on this stage, with only 4 of us having completed it. Overall, I'm 22nd, and only 26 shooters out of 102 actually completed the stage. In the final results, I am 2nd out of 38 shooters in Light Fighter division. Overall, I am 6th out of 102 shooters. I certainly learned some things at this Midnight Brutality that I will try to correct or improve upon going into the next of these events that we run. A very simple one is that I have replaced the factory battery that came with my Rain 3.0 with some others that don't seem to have the same problem with connectivity that it did. If you like this kind of content, please consider supporting InRange on Patreon. If you want to see regular in-depth match analysis, please follow me over on my Sinistral Rifleman channel. And always remember, the Second Amendment is for everyone. Thank you for watching.